Chapter 7, Part 2. When they got to Miss Girk's house, they found her car parked in the driveway. It was clear from the dripping garden hose and the bucket of soapy water standing beside it that it had recently been washed. The big green car gleamed like a lizard basking in the sun. Charlie and Alice stashed their bikes in the bushes. "Are you scared?" asked Charlie. "I mean, you've heard the stories, right?" There were a lot of rumors that had been passed around school over the years about Miss Girk and the reason she wore such loose-fitting clothes. One of the most popular stories was that she was hiding the mummified body of a kid who'd been tardy to school one too many times. Alice tried not to think about that as she drove headfirst into a bank of holly that ran along the front of Miss Girk's house. A minute later, Charlie joined her. "Next time, let's pick a bush without prickers," he whispered, wincing as he pulled off a spiky holly leaf that was stuck to one of his palms. "What do we do now?" "Let's peek in the window. If we see any sign of Lardo, we'll go straight to the police," Alice whispered back. There was a big picture window in the front of Miss Girk's house. Charlie and Alice crawled on their bellies commando style across the lawn until they were situated just beneath it. "Ready?" Alice asked. Charlie nodded, and slowly they rose up until their noses were resting on the windowsill. "See anything?" Alice whispered, peering through the glass into Miss Girk's living room. "Just some furniture," said Charlie. Thwack! 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 Charlie and Alice froze. "What was that?" Charlie whispered. "Thwack! Thwack! Thwack!" The sound seemed to be coming from the backyard. Alice signaled Charlie to get down, and they crawled across the lawn around the corner to the back of the house. Thwack! 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 It was louder now, and in between the thwacks was another sound, like a grunt. It was louder now, and in between the thwacks was the backyard was surrounded by a wooden fence that was too high to see over. Charlie put one finger to his lips, warning Alice to be quiet. Then he squatted down and interlaced his fingers to make a little basket. Like this. He went like this to make a little basket. She's probably going to have Alice put her foot in there and hoist her up. Let's see. Alice slipped her foot into his hands, and Charlie boosted her up. Thwack, grunt, thwack, thwack, "What is it?" Charlie asked up to Alice. "What do you see?" There was only one word Alice could think of to describe the terrifying sight that lay on the other side of the fence. And her voice was shaking so badly she had trouble getting it out. She stammered. Just then Charlie heard a buzzing sound near his left ear. A giant horsefly was circling his head. Anyone who's ever been bitten by a horsefly knows that it is an experience worth avoiding if at all possible. But when Charlie felt the fly land on the back of his neck, he wasn't able to swat it because his hands were busy holding on to Alice's foot. When the fly bit him, Charlie yelped and jumped 3 feet in the air, letting go of Alice's foot with such force that it launched her over the fence like a missile straight into Mrs. Girk's backyard. "Oh my gosh!" "What on earth?" Miss Girk sputtered as Alice landed at her feet in a heap. "Why are you spying on me?" "I like to make you wait." It's hard to imagine many things more unsettling than seeing your principal without her clothes on. Not that Miss Girk was naked, thank goodness, but the bright red, skin-tight outfit she was wearing that day was a far cry from the kind of clothing she normally wore. Even more shocking than the outfit itself was the fact that Alice now knew what Miss Girk had been hiding under her loose clothes. Muscles! Great big muscles! Standing there in her skimpy red suit, Miss Girk didn't look like a principal at all. She looked like Charles Atlas, the beefy muscle man Alice had seen pictures of in magazine ads. From her bulging biceps to her rippling calves, Miss Girk's rock-hard body glistened in the sunlight like a glazed ham. No wonder she'd been able to tear the pie shop apart. She was huge. "What do you have to say for yourself?" demanded Miss Girk. Alice was speechless. She had come there to accuse Miss Girk of catnapping Lardo, but looking at those giant muscles, all she could think about was Aunt Polly's couch cushions, with all the stuffing yanked out. Alice hoped she wasn't about to meet the same fate as those poor couch cushions. "Well," said Miss Girk, "let's have it." Ding dong! The doorbell chimed from inside the house, and Alice's breathed a huge sigh of relief. Whoever it was, Alice would explain everything to them. The police would come and take Miss Girk off to jail. Then Alice would bring Lardo home and spend the rest of her life trying to forget the horrifying sight of Miss Girk in that stretchy red bodybuilding outfit. "Don't move," said Mrs. Girk. Then she reached for her robe, which was hanging over the back of a chair, slipped it on, and went to answer the door. A minute later, Alice heard Charlie's voice coming from inside the house. "Here you go, Miss Girk," he shouted. "I got the groceries you asked for." "Put the bag on the table over there," Miss Girk instructed. "And there's no need to shout, young man. I'm not deaf." Charlie wasn't shouting for Miss Girk's benefit. He was trying to let Alice know that he hadn't abandoned her. After all, it was his fault that she'd ended up on the wrong side of the fence. "Is everything okay?" Charlie shouted. "Don't be shy. Speak right up." Alice wanted to run inside or call out to Charlie to get the police, but she was afraid it would make Miss Girk even madder. "I don't know what's gotten into you today, Charlie," said Miss Girk. "You're certainly behaving strangely." "May I just say, that is a very lovely robe you're wearing today, Miss Girk," Charlie shouted. "The color really brings out the blue in your eyes, and the material is so, well, nubby. I think would be a good word to describe it, don't you?" Alice couldn't imagine why Charlie was babbling on about Miss Girk's bathrobe until it dawned on her that he might be trying to distract Miss Girk to give Alice time to escape. Sky King himself would have been proud of that plan. Looking around for something to stand on, Alice spied a folding aluminum lawn chair and quickly dragged it over to the fence. But when she climbed up on it, her feet immediately slipped through the plastic webbing and the chair toppled over, taking Alice along with it and making a terrible clatter in the process. "Did I mention that I forgot to bring the sand?" Charlie asked, shouting even louder now in an attempt to try to cover up the racket Alice was making. "What on earth is the matter with you, Charles?" Miss Girk cried. Charlie was running out of ideas, so he decided it was time to come clean. "I didn't mean to do it, Miss Girk," he said. "A horsefly bit my neck, and the next thing I knew, Alice was flying over your fence." "Oh," said Miss Girk, "so you and your little girlfriend were in cahoots." "I don't know what cahoots means, and Alice is not my girlfriend, but I'm the one who threw her over the fence. So if you're going to turn one of us into a mummy, it ought to be me." Well, isn't he very gallant? Alice, who was still hopelessly tangled up in the chair, was beginning to panic. Nobody knew where she was, and clearly the police weren't on the way. Charlie had done his best, but now it was time for her to step up to the plate. So she did the only thing she could think of to do. She screamed. The minute Miss Girk heard Alice screaming, she raced for the door with Charlie at her heels. As they barreled out of the house into the backyard, visions of mummies and violated couch cushions flashed before Alice's eyes, and she screamed even louder. Miss Girk bounded down the steps, reaching for Alice with her massive arms, but the belt of her robe got caught on the door handle, yanking her backward like a dog on a leash. When she tried to pull herself free, the robe fell open, revealing her gigantic muscles for Charlie to see for the first time. His eyes practically popped out of their sockets as he took in the sight of Miss Girk in her skimpy red bodybuilding suit. Then a strange sensation came over him, like somebody popped a fizzy into his head and carbonated his brain. "Good gravy, Miss Girk," said Charlie. "You look exactly like—" But before he could finish his sentence, everything went black.